Welcome to the Transformational Podcast. We are so glad you're with us. I'm Robert, the Marine from Maryland. Chris is on the other side of the mic or camera, depending on where you're watching.
That's right. Hello, guys.
Pastor from Paradise. And we're so glad to be with you this week, or wherever you found us right now, and that we have an opportunity to pour into your lives what God's doing in our lives. Of course, the big thing we want to do, and our heart's desire is that whatever you gain from this, that it leads you into a closer walk with the Lord, and that your relationship with Him grows. And so we just pray that wherever this finds you right now, that that's what you would. We've actually already prayed over you before we started, frankly. And so we just want you to know that. So to kind of kick this thing off, it's not scripted nor prescriptive, but we do tend to start off with what's going on in your week. And so, Chris, I'll give you first swing at this one. First swing at the pinata. How about that?
Yeah. Man, a lot going on. I have to get a new rear end on my truck, that is.
Thank you for clarifying that. I was a little bit worried.
Clarity. I'm waiting for that. I'm actually without a truck, so having to wait for Mom to pick me up and drop me off. Get all this. Just kidding.
Hey, do you remember? And hopefully Mom and Dad don't like get too offended by this. But do you remember the number? I know, but do you remember the number of times that we thought they had us, and we spent a little extra time at school?
Oh yeah,
waiting pickup. And when I mean extra time, I mean like a couple hours.
Listen, when here's the thing. It happens so frequently in today's day and age. The school would have brought us to their office, and they would have made a call, Mom and Dad. Back then, they just
not
left
back
us.
then. They locked the doors.
Survival of the fittest. Y'all are out.
They locked the doors.
So, but yeah, we there was many times that one thought the other was going to get us, and now my kids, if I'm just a little late, and there's still other kids there. But if they're just like one of the last 5 there or last 10 there.
Great offense.
Like, where were you? I was like,
right?
Yeah, I got here before you were the last one. Okay, so I'm doing pretty good.
And by the way, I made it like an hour before I got picked up.
That's right.
Now, in all fairness to our parents, in reality, they were working their tails off to provide, and they did an awesome job. And it always provided, I think, I guess now it's really provided great humor and some good stories. But what else is going on in your world aside from needing a new rear end and having to get driven everywhere, by Julie?
Well, this last weekend I got to do a wedding out in Lubbock for a former student, and that was a lot of fun. He got to know his bride to be when we were doing premarital counseling. But I guess the cool part was her mom was the Tech basketball coach, the women's Tech basketball coach. So at the wedding, and she played Bryn, the bride, now married, played basketball at Tech, and so
she was a baller.
Yeah,
collar.
So the Tech basketball.
Did she wish she was a little taller?
No, she didn't. I wished I was because man, at the altar, dude, I'm an average. You remember when average size for a male was 5'10"? I don't think that's the case anymore, man. Everybody, I don't know what's in the water, but it's different, man. It's just different. But they are so tall. But then the Lady Tech basketball team ended up being there too, and I've never felt more short in my life. Everybody was tall. I was in the land of the giants. Anyway,
it's awesome though. What a great experience!
But it was cool. It was really cool. And you know what was really cool is that, man, that's one of those families that we just dearly love. That they were so good to us in our time out there with them, and took care of our family, and we loved them. Their families, we just considered their kids part of, our ministry family. And so it's always fun to get to go and be a part of things like that. But
That's
man,
awesome.
it was good. What was going on in your world?
Well, it would be, let me just put it this way. I was listening to a podcast this morning, Chris, on my run, and I really identified with it. Doesn't matter which one, but the person was talking about a time, like a season of their life where things they just didn't line up, I mean, it was like one of those, like, it's raining sort of seasons, right?
Right.
And for them, it was an entire year. And one of the things that they I would say they learned through that is that when people asked them like how things were, right, they would be a little more honest about it coming out of that season, like not be like, oh, I'm good, and then kind of walk off that standard, church entry you get, but to be more like, hey, I'm excellent, which means things are really, really good, or hey, you know what, I could use some prayer. And so I identified with that because at this kind of this, and it's honestly, Chris, it's almost feels weird to talk about it because it's a micro season. Things have been amazing. God's given me a great deal of favor and mercy, and he's moving me back home early and all that other stuff. But today, specifically today, our cat of, I don't know, I think it's like 14 years old. It's a cat that we have named Gabriel a long time ago, and it really grew into that name. It was a guard cat. It knew where the boundaries of our property was, and I'm not even being facetious. It literally, the first day in our house, went to the boundary of the property line and sat down. It would always watch over the kids wherever they were at. Anyway, it's passing away. It's on its last leg. So that's making humans at home sad. Son had to go home early from school today to kind of complicate it because he's sick. I got some other stuff going on. Hillary's trying to manage all this, and I can't do anything.
Oh yeah, it's terrible.
And so it's one of those times where I guess you could say I really fall back into and I rest into this idea. It was that song that I was thinking about earlier, which is that song that's praise, give him praise, and the highest praise, give him praise, and the what is it? The
lowest? Is that what you said?
Lowest, I think. Yeah, he is worthy, right? And so I tend to turn my eyes to him.
Can I give a true confession real quick?
Yeah,
I thought it said highest twice. It wasn't until you said lowest earlier that I was like, oh. It says lowest the second song?
I think so.
I think you're right, but just true confession. Anyway, go ahead.
Now, I would sing it, but I think we talked about this on the last podcast. I don't have a voice for the stage.
Hey, listen, but you have a face for radio.
It's Betty telling me.
Go ahead, sorry.
No, for real. It's awesome. But yeah, so I could probably today, not yesterday or the day prior, could probably do a little bit better. I've been a little bit honest with the Lord here in the last 2 or 3 days, where, I just, frankly, I tell him what's going on. And it's funny, Chris, a lot of times I think I now say we, because I don't want to say me. I want to group us all in here.
Yes.
We think we can't be brutally honest with the Lord. Mm-hmm. But he knows our heart, right?
He's not surprised.
We're not fooling him.
No.
And so I would tell you that in the last 24 hours, I've been pretty brutally honest with him, and so anyway, it was interesting. So as that's kind of going on and we were talking about where we were going tonight and you wanted to dive into 1 Peter, I felt it was appropriate to tell people what's really going on because I don't want folks to think that like somehow we live these miracle lives. We still have seasons. Yeah. Although I will be honest with you, like I heard somebody say once that I don't have the market cornered on suffering. In fact, really nobody does, right? Like it could be worse. And frankly, Chris, before we dive in, one of the things that when things were not all that great, when I was in a active duty squadron, one of the reminders that we have in our hallway is a pair of boots, a helmet, and an inverted gun, an inverted rifle. And it's a memorial typically to somebody who's passed away, right?
Right.
So anytime I walked in the morning and I was not feeling, we'll call it feeling it, I'd look over and I was like, you know what? It's not that bad.
That's right.
And that was a good pickup. But you know why else it's not that bad? It's not just because of that. It's because the Lord is good.
Yeah, he is.
And that's one of the things that David always talked about is he always talked about how it was at that moment. And then he talked about the promise of the future moving forward. So I think we should jump into 1 Peter before I overshare. if I haven't already overshared. And we'll talk about what it sounds like God's been talking to you about this week in 1 Peter.
Yeah,
you were telling me about
there's so much to it. I think each chapter there's something that just stirs my my curiosity and challenges me. But before I do, since it was Labor Day, I just wanted to see if you knew what construction workers do at Labor Day parties. Do you know?
No.
They
What? They what?
hold on. They raise the roof. There you go.
Oh goodness
Hey,
gracious,
also, do
Chris.
you know what day most babies are born?
Labor Day.
Labor Day.
There you go.
There you go. All right.
All right.
That's
All right.
fun. All right. Listen.
You're so
We're all
ridiculous.
having fun here. We're all having fun.
I know. So funny.
Hey, so Robert, what's interesting is for Labor Day, one of the things I did do is, and I'll back it up. This past weekend, we were in Lubbock and we went to this barbecue joint that was so good. Evie Mays, or something like that out in Lubbock. Yeah. It's completely gluten free, so Julie could eat there without getting sick, no cross contamination.
Nice.
People don't always get that because they think, well, there's gluten free items on the menu. They don't get the fact that there's cross contamination. If she gets sick, she's out for the weekend. So it's one of those deals of when we find a place like that, it was awesome because the desserts were awesome. Everything was so good. And it's because the owner's husband, or one of them, is a celiac. And so they get it. And they're tired of having to eat, everybody else getting good food and they have to eat either what they make at home or terrible food out. And so they opened this joint. It is so good. It had a line the entire time we were there, and they sell out almost every day. So good. But my son, youngest son, he has this affinity for always finding the most expensive thing on the menu. And I'm like, and here's what I know, is that he probably will eat some of it, but he's not going to eat all of it.
Yep.
And so he wanted ribs. And I was like, man, that's what he wanted. And I was like, all right, here's the deal. We can make ribs at Labor Day, but let's not get them here. And he was like, I said, I'll let you help me make them. And that got him. He was like, yeah, I'm in.
I'm in on that.
Yep. Here's the deal. I probably wasn't going to get ribs no matter how it worked, but I was trying to work with him and go, all right, I get that you want ribs or whatever, but I enjoy smoking ribs. And Mom and Dad were coming to Paradise for the day, and we were planning on having burgers anyway. I was like, listen, we'll just add ribs to it. It'll be great. So we got ribs, and we got them out the night before. He helped me mix the rub. We put the rub on. We put them in the deal. And Monday, we started smoking them. We did the 3-2-1 rib method. All right, it's the method to do, in my opinion, for ribs. It's so good. And each step, every time we would take them out of the smoker for the next step, it was like, oh my gosh, mouth was watering.
Yeah.
Right. I'm like,
it's time to eat.
And by the time we got him to the last part, I mean, I picked it up and the bone, came
fell
out
right
of
out,
it. Right. And you're like, perfect. And it was so delicious that, I when I was cutting them up, I just got a little piece and ate it. But here's the deal. I was like, man, all right, I can't do that because now I just want to eat more. Like the whole time I'm trying to chop them up, I'm like, all right, let me cut another little piece for myself because it just makes me want more of those ribs. Now, here's what's crazy. It is an internal desire that's driven by an experience of how I receive those ribs, like what those ribs taste like, and all the sensors go.
Frankly, everybody right now who's listening to this is actually probably gonna throw you some hate later on because they are just dying to have some. I'm dying to have ribs, and there's no hope of ribs at the moment.
So here's what's great, though. So this past week when I was reading through 1 Peter, starting with chapter 2 is where we'll jump tonight.
Okay,
it talks about this idea that I want to of once you've tasted something, it stirring a desire for more. And I want you to see it with me. Let's start at verse 1 of chapter 2. It says, so get rid of evil behavior. Be done with all deceit, hypocrisy, jealousy, and all unkind speech. Now I'm going to pause there because it says get rid of all evil behavior. And, sometimes I like to write down in my journal, all right, what is evil behavior? What is that considered? Because I think sometimes, when you think evil behavior, you think murderers, you think, child molesters, you think the worst of the worst, right? But the reality is that anything that doesn't align with God's truth is evil. So if If you lie, that's evil. If you
anything that's not aligned with His will. It's
right.
a lot, and it's funny. We like to rank things,
Oh
but
yeah.
that's not how it really gets seen.
Right.
So
So
yeah,
he's saying, man, get rid of it, all of it, and then he gets specific on these things with all deceit. So not just, I think it's interesting. It's deceit, right? It's white lies. That's still deceit. But I would also say it's manipulation.
yeah,
You ever think about that? Like when you manipulate someone, you are trying to deceive them into doing something for your benefit. You're not
yeah,
right. And
yeah.
so, man, when I see that, I think of that
And you
hypocrisy.
know what's funny, real quick on that one, Chris,
Yeah,
is I think there is a fine line between the difference between deceit and winning somebody over is one is for your benefit and the other is for their benefit.
that's right. You want what's
And
best
so
for
if you
them.
can't figure that out, like if you're like, is this deceit or is this me team building? The question is who are you trying to benefit?
Right. Yeah.
That's a simple way.
So then it goes on with the hypocrisy and jealousy. What does yours say in verse 1? Does it say jealousy?
It says envy. It's a kind
Okay,
of it's
envy.
the same word or a different word for the same thing.
Right. So it goes through this list
Slander of
of
every kind, that kind of
right.
stuff.
It's got unkind speech. I love the way he translates that unkind speech, because the thing is that man, I don't know. We live in a time when people just they are brutal with their words. And the things that
Yeah.
they say to people and they say about people. I just heard a story this today actually of a person who works at a school. They have to call parents when their kids are aren't there often enough when they're. And we're already early in the year and they're already having to call for
Yeah,
excessive
it's not.
absence.
Yeah.
And the parent um, just basically told the person who works at the school how much she hated her voice. That her voice annoys her to no end.
That's so sad.
And yeah, but you think about it, Robert. Like, look at our culture today.
Yeah.
Like, unkind speech is people don't even bat an eye anymore. The things they say to at Little League games to the officials, the things that they say to each other at you see it at city council meetings, school board meetings. You see it in politics all the time. And listen, I think it matters the way we talk about people and the way we talk to people, and he does too. I think God's saying, hey, all of this would classify under evil behavior. And so then he goes on, and this is the part we really want to get to, is that like newborn babies, you must crave spiritual milk so that you will grow into a full experience of salvation. And he says, cry out for this nourishment. And then it says this, now that you have had a taste of the Lord's kindness, that now that you've experienced it even a little bit, you've tasted his kindness a little bit, like it should, just like those ribs, it was like, man, I've got to have more of these. And I think of it, like newborn babies, you must crave spiritual milk, right? I think of those late nights, and early mornings.
Yeah. No kidding.
With our boys when they're just infants, and man, I would sit up, get up in the middle of the night and sit up, and they craved milk, right? They didn't crave much, but they craved milk, right? There wasn't much, but that's all that they needed for nourishment. And at the same time, like as we are growing in our faith, there should be a craving for the thing that nourishes our own soul, our own faith. And I think that what's interesting is that so often we become apathetic about it, and it's like take it or leave it kind of deal. And it's for a lot of different reasons. It's just like, sometimes my boys will eat a bunch of snacks during the day, right? And so when we get to the main course and we get to the main meal, they're not interested. Or when we were young, you remember when mom and dad would like set my drink on the other side of the table and be like, you can't have anything else to drink until you eat your food. Because what would I do? I'd get in there and I would just drink whatever the beverage was, and I wouldn't
and
eat
then
my
you're
food
full
because I was
but
too
you didn't
full.
have unfortunately you didn't have the nourishment. And it's funny, Chris, when we have those situations, right, we as parents, we see that and we're like, oh, root cause of that is Home slice has been grazing all day, and others have been eating all day, or they decided to drink their entire beverage, right? And so what do we as parents do? We put in what I would call, I don't want to say safeguards, but we change behavior.
That's right.
Right.
Yeah.
And so I say that because I'll tell them myself, there's days where I crave the Lord's word, as in like I wake up and I desire to read it, I desire to listen to it, I desire to bathe myself in the worship music and the rest. And then there's days, and that might be a little bit like yesterday and today. I'm not saying one way or the other that I'm I don't know if apathetic is not the right word to it, because in this case it's more maybe I'm pouty to it, or maybe I'm apathetic to it, or maybe I've let enough other things in that now I'm callous to it, right? And so if you're like, man, I don't really crave anything and I don't really whatever, well, much like we do with our kids, take a look around and like, what do you need to eliminate, and what do you need to add, and what do you need to kind of like, where do you need to turn the noise down a little bit?
Because let's be honest, the things that my kids snack on all day, they're not good for them.
Nah,
they're not providing good nourishment. And in the same way, the things that we fill our minds with, it's what drive our thought process. It's what begins to stir our other desires. I mean, my youngest son, the thing that I'm about to watch with him, that kid craves sugar. All right, he gets a little sugar. He thinks he needs a lot of sugar, right? And man, there's more and more science, and I'm going to sound like an old man now, but there's more and more science showing how bad sugar is. It is, man, how bad it is. I'm listening to a neuroscientist right now on the podcast. Not right now, like while we're talking.
No, well, I hope not. That'd be weird.
But neuroscience, and the thing that he comes back to time and time and time again is how bad sugar is for our brain. And you know, Robert, I think what's interesting is the other passage that I think of when I think of tasting of God's goodness is in Psalm 34, where verse 8 that says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good. Oh, the joys of those who take refuge in Him." But I want to back that up for just a minute, because that's like the almost like the refrain, the moment it kind of comes together, because you start at the beginning. He says, "I'll praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak His praises." It goes back to what you were talking about earlier, praising Him the highest, praising the lowest. I'll boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart. So I think sometimes we read that helpless and go, "I'm not helpless," but you have this moment of going, "I can't fix this situation."
Yeah,
I can't.
I sought the Lord and He answered me, which is interesting, because I think sometimes when He doesn't answer me now is when I start to wonder if He is going to answer me.
Yeah,
I'm sure you can. Sorry, I know I'm like jumping up in the middle of your current situation, right?
You're exactly going where I'm going with this, because we didn't put this together, but this speaks to what you've been going through, because it says, "I prayed to the Lord and He answered me. He freed me from all my fears." Those who look to Him for help will be radiant with joy. Right? Mm-hmm. Those who look for Him will be radiant with joy. No shadow of shame will darken their faces. And then here's verse 6. "In my desperation, I prayed, and the Lord listened. He saved me from my troubles. For the angel of the Lord is a guard. He surrounds and defends all who fear Him." And that's where He says, "Taste and see that the Lord is good."
Yeah.
Taste of His goodness. And I guess what I'm saying is that sometimes His goodness isn't found on the mountaintop. It's found in the valley.
Yeah. Can we talk about that, though, in the taste and see? Because you went to 1 Peter 2. And I don't want to back us up too much, but I want to go to 1 Peter 1.
Okay, go for it.
Because I think 1 Peter 1, verse 3.
That context is important. Yeah.
Yeah, well, and I think it actually describes the way that the Lord is good. I think it actually articulates. So in the way that 1 Peter 2 articulates how we should crave that milk and that kind of stuff, 1 Peter 1, verse 3 is actually almost like a definition of what we are like praising Him for, right? Because it goes, and it's just funny as we were kind of talking, and it hit me as I was reading through this, because the reason why it drew my eyes to it, Chris, just so everybody's like, how did he get there? Well, my the title that the author, or not the author, but the title that they put in my Bible for this section here is "Praise to God for a Living Hope."
Oh yeah,
right. Praise to God for a living hope, and I think that living hope is the piece that, well, it passes all understanding in a lot of ways. So it says, "Praise be to God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ. In his great mercy, he's given us new birth into a living hope through the resurrection of Christ Jesus from the dead, and into, in other words, out of and into an inheritance that can never perish, spoil, or fade, kept in heaven for you, who through faith are shielded by God's power until the coming of the salvation that is ready to be revealed in the last time. In this you greatly rejoice. Though now for a little while you may have had to suffer grief in all kinds of trials, these have come so that your faith, of greater worth than gold, which perishes even though refined by fire, may be proved genuine and may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. And so I guess my thing is, it talks about come, crave that stuff, grow in faith, crave in your soul, taste and see that the Lord is good. In what way is he good? He's good in that he has saved us from death into life, into an inheritance, into where he's guarding us, into where he protects us, into where he walks with us, into when he meets us where we're at, frankly, like totally meets us where we're at. He's not shocked with where we bring to him. He's not shocked with, honestly, where we enter. It was funny, Chris. I know we're supposed to get the, the slander and hypocrisy and that kind of stuff, every kind of that stuff out of us.
Right.
His salvation, the blood of Christ, covers that. And so in Christ, in God's eyes, when we choose to follow Jesus, that is white as snow, right? All that sin is gone. We still have, the work to become more like him. And that stuff we should be working its way out of us as we become more like Christ. But what I love about it is he doesn't meet us when it's all out of our life.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah, like he meets us
where we are.
Right where we're at. Yeah. And so I love this verse because it talks about, in this you greatly rejoice, though now for a little while you may have to suffer grief in all kinds of trials. My trial is minimal in comparison to what these folks were going through, which were like literal persecution and death. But what he's saying is that our hope is in heaven. And I talk about this all the time when people are like, I don't know, they're worried about this or that. I won't make anything on that, but I'll say, hey, my kingdom's in heaven. Like,
yeah,
like I'm passing through. And yeah, life, we were talking about this. My wife and I were talking about this with the cat. It's not fun. Like that's the sucky part of life. Yeah. You know what I mean? But it is like the part of life that even that like we have to go through, and it's the thing, the part of life that God walks through with us. And I know this is like a simple form because it's that, because some people are walking through areas where they've lost a loved one, or they're losing a loved one, or they're having to walk through all that stuff. I mean, frankly, that's more common than I think we like to admit, or even, not in my case, but, I know I have friends whose kids walked away from Christ.
Yeah.
And that's tough stuff. Right. But the promise here, which is what I like about this, is that our faith may be proved genuine and may result in praise, glory, and honor when Jesus Christ is revealed. Though you, and this is verse 8, picking back up, though you have not seen him, you love him. And even though you do not see him now, you believe in him and are filled with an inexpressible, oh man, I love this. Sorry, this is great, right? You're filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the goal of your faith and the salvation of your souls.
Man, and that's really the heartbeat behind that Psalm 34 and all of this, is that it's not that you're going to be happy all the time. It's that this joy, that you're filled with joy because you recognize the circumstances you're walking through are temporary, and really in light of what Jesus has done for you, you're going to get through it. I don't want to minimize the moment. Yeah, it feels heavy. It's not fun. On the human side of things, it's awful. But Robert, you know who also thinks that it's awful? God.
Yeah. I know, right?
Because and it reminds me every time we say, why is there pain in the world? We had to put, or we had two dogs pass on us this past year, and it was the first time I had to be there when we had to put a dog down. It was horrible.
Yep.
And I remember just afterwards going, like thinking, God reminded me of Romans 8, where it says, against its will, all of creation was subjected to the curse of sin.
Yeah.
That all of creation longs for the day that it will be freed, right? And I think sometimes in the midst of our pain, right, in the midst of the struggle here on earth, I think sometimes we're going, God, what's this? And he's going, yeah, I don't like it either.
Yeah.
I hate sin, not because sin is bad, but because sin hurts those that I love.
Yeah. It's interesting. We were talking about something today that talked about the kind of the honestly, the loss of kids, and it's too hard to explain, but just a really bad kind of thing. And I've heard over the past, like you said, where is God in this and the rest? And when Jesus came to the tomb of Lazarus, right, he's about to raise him from the dead, and it says Jesus wept, right? And everybody's made a big meal out of that, two words in a verse, and they go into why he says it. But the thing that resonated the most with me is when I heard someone said he wept because to him that was not by design.
Yeah,
it wasn't supposed to be that way. And so for him, it broke his heart too, because that's not the way it was supposed to be. And so I look at this. Go ahead.
And that's not the only place that we see Jesus weep. Did you? When Jesus is looking over Jerusalem, he sees the city and he weeps for the city because of their unbelief.
Yeah, it's never supposed to be that way. They're supposed to be following. They're supposed to be like literally like his people and doing his thing. The cool thing is in these grief moments or in these trials or in whatever God's got you in, because the range of things could be anything from what I'm walking through, which is quasi minimal, to what I have friends I have actually a friend on the West Coast military who's working through stage 3 cancer. All right, so like there's real stuff out there, right? What's fun, or not fun, but interesting with her, that inexpressible joy. She's a Christ follower. She sends me a text the other day and she goes, she said, God is answering prayers. I have a peace.
That's awesome.
Right. And it's because she has that glorious joy because of the salvation of her soul.
Yeah.
And so I think,
so Robert, what do you do? I mean, let's get real practical. So so two things. One, you're walking through a tough time when maybe desiring to feed yourself spiritually isn't so desirable, right? You're going, God, for lack of better words, God, I'm not feeling it right now, right?
So I'll be honest, Chris, I've boycotted. Hey, I've boycotted. I don't know who else has done it. I'm sure everybody else is better than me and not ever boycotted, but I've woke up in the morning and I was like, I'm mad. I'm going to boycott you. And of course, so dumb, right? So dumb. But what's fascinating is even when I do boycott, it's like one of those like hard to say mad long moments where the Lord's like, all right, big guy. Chill out.
I think the thing that has helped me, and once again, I'm coming back to Psalm 34.
Yes. No, I think it's a great verse to anchor on.
I think the thing that I come back to is that I'm going to read it again. Verse 1, it says, I will praise the Lord at all times. I will constantly speak his praise. I will boast only in the Lord. Let all who are helpless take heart. Come, let us tell of the Lord's greatness. Let us exalt his name together. Now, the reason I come back to that is I think the thing that God reminds me of in the times that I'm frustrated when we're walking through suffering is, hey, take time to remember God's goodness in the midst of the times that aren't. Yeah, because it's our circumstances don't change the goodness of God.
No, they don't.
He is good through the good times. He is good through the bad times. And I think so often we can lose the reason that we lose appetite is we allow the bad times to change the way we feel about it. And I would say it almost like this. If you've ever brushed your teeth and then you drank orange juice, right? You're like, that stuff is nasty. No, the orange juice didn't change. The taste in your mouth did, but it was because of where you were, is the circumstances you're surrounding you. I think in the same way, it's like, wait. Let's let let's let the dust settle, but let's also remember that, hey, the only thing good in the midst of bad circumstances is God, and He's good because He will bring you through. He's good because He's never let me down. He's good because He will rescue me. He's good because even I love verse 10 that even strong young lions sometimes go hungry, but those who trust in the Lord will lack no good thing. I say it this way, is that sometimes we have to anchor ourselves in what we know to be true about God.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely
because in
right.
the moment of the circumstances, we can't let circumstances keep us from seeing. Because the reality is what I need the most in the midst of those is actually pure spiritual milk.
Well, and Chris, frankly, it's funny if you go through this first. So I gave you like the worst. Like in the worst, I boycott, right?
Right.
And then I come back.
Which, by the way,
and then
I've been there too, and I have moments like that too. So I'm not saying all this to say I don't, but I'm just saying, like, this is one of those things of trying to figure out, all right, so what are some practical ways, some things that we can do in this?
And so I think the practical ways is actually presented here in Psalms 34. That's one of the things that I wanted to hit. And it's the things that I do. You talked about one of them, right? We praise.
Yeah.
We return to Him in praise. We return to Him and remember. We go through the things that God's been doing in our life. Frankly, I think it's the number of times I've walked into church and have been real with the Lord in church and allowed the praise of others to wash over me and to bring me comfort. Chris, I run sound for a church, and one of the things that I always stress and drive home with our worship team, because I do have some leadership role in that, is you don't know how people are coming in here, and some of them just need to put their packs down. Right? They just need to come here and just let the praise of God wash over them and get some of that week off of them, is what I say. Just get some of that off of them, right?
Yeah.
Some of the other stuff is actually written here in the Word. If you go into the remembering part, right, is verse 15. The eyes of the Lord are on the righteous, and His ears are attentive to their cry. Mm-hmm. Verse 17, the righteous cry out, and the Lord hears them. He delivers them from all their troubles. The Lord is close to the brokenhearted. That's in verse 18.
Right. He rescues those whose spirits are crushed.
Yeah, He delivers them. He protects them. The Lord redeems His servant. And so I think it's that remembering, that kind of like gathering up. And, like I told you at the beginning, and so I'm going to land the plane here because we're kind of there, is, we can be pretty generic and inauthentic with the way that we approach our friends and our other Christ followers. And when they ask us, how are things going? And we can be like, oh, we're good. When the world around us is literally falling apart, when we need help, and we just choose not to even seek or ask that help. And so I think it's not with everybody. Obviously, of course, tonight we're with everybody, so it's fun. But is to be authentic and tell folks, hey, I'm not doing all right. I'm struggling. I need prayer, and I covet your prayer, and I covet your support. And if there's ways that they can practically, logistically help you, is to not be so arrogant or proud to not allow that.
Yeah.
And to invite that in, because part of this craving spiritual milk, part of this craving being with the Lord and all that other stuff, that what you talked about when you were talking about those ribs and stuff, that actually, Chris, is what brings me back from boycotting. I'm serious.
Yeah.
That's what brings me back from boycotting. So when I'm boycotting, I start like going, but I miss Him.
Yeah. Yeah.
I miss Him. And so then I end up coming back, and then I end up remembering, and I end up praising, and I end up reaching out, and I end up praying. And so I think that's, I don't know, we kind of meandered a little bit tonight, but I think it was an important meander.
Yeah.
I'll give you last thoughts or closing comments.
So in those moments when you're walking through the tough days, you got to choose to take time to praise, right? You got to choose to make praise part of your, your weapon is your praise to fight out of it. And I want to be very specific with that. I would say, put on worship music.
Yeah.
And don't guard what goes into your heart, guard what goes into your mind during those times. That's when you need the most spiritual nourishment. Is when those times are tough. It's like an athlete who's working out, trying to gain weight, trying to whatever. They're pushing their body really hard. Well, the harder they push their body, the more important nutrition is. And when we're in the midst of a tough time, a trial, a test, and our faith is being pushed, and that's when we need the spiritual nourishment the most. So, man, I would say ensure you're putting in spiritual nourishment. Because I might wrap it up with, because I always have to create some cheesy pastor saying, right? But
of course you do.
When life is no fun, take time to remember what God has done.
Amen. I love it.